from some of Maimonides perhaps, and assembled in a pain-free way that would fit at the Society for Ethical Culture or other places where they don't sing about it. And anodyne as this is, and rather tedious, it doesn't, like holy water, if it doesn't do you any good, it still doesn't do you all that much harm. And it meets my test, really, which is this. Though I do, in fact, know a bit about religion and other people's religions, I sort of have forced myself to find out now what it's been forced upon me. My test is this. I don't want to have to know what your religion is. I live in the United States of America. You can have any religion you want as long as you can keep it to yourself. But the moment I have to hear about it, or you want it taught in my school to my kids, or produced in the public square with taxpayers' money, or you object to anyone criticizing it, especially if you back that even with the hint of a tiny threat of violence, you have made in me a mortal enemy. And I'll keep my part of that pact if you will keep yours. So by all means, the mush solution, because it's all mush to begin with.
I will briefly address just something that Christopher just said. Christopher seems to be saying that religion is harmful at worst and usually, and at best as long as it's stripped of any kind of passion, then it should be allowed. One of the greatest living historians, who's British, and I assume Christopher knows him, is the historian Paul Johnson. And he wrote History of the American People. His argument throughout the book, and he's one of the most readable historians, and I got to know him when I was in England, is that America's prosperity actually has to do with its religious zeal. That America, it was not by accident that this nation that was born 230 years ago rose to become the world's greatest power. Not in modern times, but of all time. The Roman Empire at its height did not field legions in 162 nations, or have I'm not going to go into how they calculate this, but based on ancient times, modern times, our GDP by far would outdo the Roman Empire, were brought to modern times. He says it was because of its religious zeal. He points out something interesting. He even says, look at the marketing of Coca-Cola. It's the real thing. Words like manifest destiny. The argument can be made that because America is a very religious country, in God we trust, and all these things that surround us, one nation under God, that it had this belief in itself, because belief was central to the fabric of the nation. And by and large, America was never guilty of religious wars, of going and slaughtering people in the name of the Christian God, which is predominant here in the United States. On the contrary, there are 80 million born-again Christians in America. And they were largely the political base of George Bush. And they supported wars to remove tyrants, when many people who were not people of faith did not support those wars by and large. And you might say till today, I think the war in Iraq was a big mistake. But remember, this was a war to remove a killer, and we didn't fight it well, and we made a lot of mistakes, and too many people died, and too much money was wasted. But we removed this killer. America's not into religious wars. We didn't then say, okay, Iraq's going to be a Christian nation, or we're going to have bases there. Let's stop saying that if you have religious zeal and passion, you're going to shove it down people's throats. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie. Not only is it a lie, but it's character assassination, because Christopher started this debate by saying that science is based on facts. Now, I want to see the facts about religious people in America who are violent. Just a second. Now, to answer Naomi's, and you can bring exceptions, but they prove the rule. America is a peaceful nation that has never had this religious war, although it is the most religious country in the Western Hemisphere, by far. Naomi's question, briefly, and she's gone, so Avram, you'll please give her my answer, okay? Why don't we proselytize? You know, this is interesting. I think that one of the things that Christopher Hitchens and other atheists share with religious fundamentalists is a belief in uniformity over true diversity. In other words, Christopher cannot accept that anyone should be religious. It's subtitle of his book, How Religion Poisons Everything. Richard Dawkins, as I said, actually believes that religious parents ought to be, he wrote either they should be prosecuted or should be denied teaching their children religion. You shouldn't even have freedom of choice in America how you educate your kids. Come on, if that's not an extreme position. Okay, you can clap. You can clap if you believe that we ought to imprison parents for raising their kids the way they want to. You can live in that frickin' world. But let me tell you, I will fight and die before I live in a country that either forces religion on people or forces them not to have religion, okay? And I find it astonishing that people would clap when someone says that religious parents should be prosecuted for teaching their kids religion. So be it. It just proves my point. The new fundamentalists are often the atheists. They are the ones who are intolerant. The reason why Judaism does not proselytize is because we do not believe in uniformity. We believe that the world is enriched by difference. We don't believe we're right, and you have to be like us to be right. I never told Christopher Hitchens once tonight that he should be a man of faith, or that he's facing God, as we all are. And to use your words on my radio show, you said that you mentioned to Charlie Rose that you were dying, and you said, well, just more rapidly than others. And I hope that it's, God willing, not as rapidly. I hope that you have long life. In fact, I'm going to end this debate with a little gesture to show how important that is to me. But Christopher, when you come along and you say that everyone should be like you because you're certain that everyone is wrong, that's uniformity. Everyone should be like this. I think a world that is all masculine is insufferable. If it's all feminine, it's insufferable. I actually believe in diversity and difference. There are going to be people who believe, people who don't believe. Religion for so many centuries made the mistake of saying, no, if you don't believe, we're going to burn you at the stake because we're right. And now atheists are telling us, if you actually believe in something, you are a stupid, uneducated, primitive, backwoods Neanderthal. And we're the smart ones. Come on, if that isn't condescending, then what is? We can live in that world where we just insult each other, abuse each other, put each other down. We can only find the bad in each other. It's been done. I won't do it. If I lose the debate, I won't do it. If I'm never invited to speak again, I won't do it. I will not betray myself to be popular. I won't do it. I have beliefs. And my belief is that we have something to learn from each other. I believe it to the core of my being, and that's why Jews don't proselytize.
Well, I don't know if I can come up to Shmuley's matchless courage in maintaining that there should be two sexes and two genders. But I admire him for setting the example of fortitude that's involved. I'll confine myself to the question of whether manifest destiny prevented religious war in the United States or not. Now, Paul Johnson, who I suspect you of having met at Oxford, by the way.
I met him in London. We had an amazing whiskey together.
Is an extreme right-wing Catholic nutbag, actually. Who I used to know quite well. With some merits as a historian, it's true, a bit of a potboiler. But if you quote him rightly on this, he's just wrong. Until the promulgation of the federal Constitution, if you were in Maryland and you were not a Catholic, you couldn't hold office. If you were in Massachusetts and you couldn't hold office. If you were in Georgia, you had to affirm the state religion, which was, interestingly enough, Protestantism, not further defined. Jews were subject to disabilities in various states. You go on, everyone knows the story. Of course, the 13 colonies would have fallen apart, and on a religious basis too, if it wasn't for the secular work of the two giants of the subject, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who first brought about the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom. They said, no, we begin by destroying the established church. Every country that ever grows up into anything like a mature democracy has to do this. Sometimes it's a process of terrible violence, as in France or Russia. Sometimes it's not so bad as in the English Civil War, but any country seeking maturity has to break the established church. That was easy when it was just the Anglican Episcopalians. It's gone, abolished. Okay, says Virginia, now what? Patrick Henry says, why don't we subsidize instead all churches? That was quite a popular thought. Everyone pays tithes to keep all faiths going. Or only one or two. No, says Jefferson. No, says Madison. We're going to propose something completely new. No one has to support any church of any kind at all. You want a church, build it yourself. This is the first time in history, it still is, because the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom becomes the basis of the First Amendment to our Constitution. The first time ever that a country has announced itself to be secular, where the only mention of God in its Constitution, except for the very vague preamble, is, and all of religion, is showing how and where it must be and is limited in the public square. Only mentioned in order to be constrained, because they knew its horrible power. Have we been true then to this, which totally negates Johnson's view? Madison thought you shouldn't even have chaplains in the armed forces, neither, by the way, do I, not at taxpayers' expense, nor opening the prayers of Congress or proceedings every day, flat out unconstitutional. We haven't been true to this document, but it's because of that, not of manifest destiny, that we've been spared religious war. Anyway, we weren't spared religious war. The missionaries went far and wide to convert the Indian tribes. The Indian tribes fought against each other as far away as Oregon, as Catholic and Protestant, egged on by different kinds of missionaries. It speeded the destruction of Native America. The American Civil War, one of the worst wars ever fought, was fought over whether Christianity could or could not justify the continuation of slavery, and was, by its great abolisher Lincoln, denounced as a war between two kinds of Christian. William McKinley, announcing American expansionism and imperialism in the invasion of the Philippines, said, we sent our army and navy to the Philippines to Christianize the Filipinos, who he didn't know, or maybe did, had been Catholic for 3 centuries. Well, it's an interesting question from a Protestant like McKinley. He may not have thought that they counted as Christian, or he may simply not have known that they're called the Philippines for a reason, that another bloody Christian imperial power had decided to name millions of people after one of its blood-stained Catholic kings. Comes to the same thing? No, not exactly. To say we're exempt from religious warfare in this country is nonsense. And then finally to join the First World War. The pious Christian Woodrow Wilson takes us into a war. Every contending party in Europe is led by its king emperor, who's head of his local church, from Russia to Britain, the most destructive war in human history, and the one that curtain raises fascism, Stalinism, and the era of the totalitarianism. No, let nobody say we've been exempt, but let it be understood that it is our right to be exempt from it, and that every time you hear a religious demagogue open his or her mouth, you have the right to say they're being anti-American, and that their right to do this is in conflict with the law, not always, but sometimes. Utah was told it couldn't be in the Union unless it gave up plural marriage and, what amounts to the same, incest and rape and trading of children, the selling of daughters to uncles, dirty old uncles as wives. That's what plural marriage really means, incest and rape. And it's still carried on with insufficient police attention in some parts of Utah and Nevada to this day, as the Reverend Jeffs can show you. No, we said to the Mormons, you're out of the Union and the army's coming if you want to practice this religion. Of course, certain things should be illegal, especially as they bear upon the child. Is there anyone in this hall who thinks that religion justifies the mutilation of a child's genitals? Is there? Good. Well, wouldn't you like a law that said that non-elective surgery on the private parts of a child should be enacted? Isn't it time? What a shanda, what a shame, what a disgrace that we still haven't got this far. We can't prevent, in the name of God, in the name of faith, genital mutilation in our country. And we complacently sit here as if religion was no threat to us. You see what a long job civilization has, taming faith and making it finally acceptable to the point where you and I can talk about it this way. But it took a long time. We've no right to forget what religion was like before its fangs were drawn, as I started by saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hitchens and Rabbi Boteach. You both speak with an eloquence at its highest pitch. I have just two quick breaks.